good.
Right there. Nice.
Beautiful.
Get back in the frame. Almost. Side there.
So it's pretty tricky. You don't want to. You want to come get close enough to the bottom. I think that's a flounder or a
Sole maybe over on the
Sole?
halibut.
hagfish.
Oh, sea pen.
Mm-hmm.
Bulella.
I know
Yeah, that current is moving, huh?
Yeah, buddy.
We know you're up for it, Kylie.
Just trying to get back in the Argus frame and use that to go forward with.
Lots of sea cucumbers out here as well. What are they called? Nudibranchs? No,
No.
sea
Holothurians.
cucumbers are.
Oh, yeah,
Holothurians.
holothurians, yeah.
Yes.
We're also seeing some hagfish, I think.
Mm-hmm.
They're my favorite.
My favorite answer when people ask what our creepiest animal sighting is,
they-
hagfish,
they
no
are.
skeleton, but a skull.
Yes. And they secrete some kind of
Spectacular
slimy.
mucus, yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's actually it's a polysaccharide. It's chemically really interesting how they create it too, that it reacts with the seawater, and then it just keeps reacting because it's a chain molecule.
I guess
it just
it-
keeps making more and more and more slime.
Yeah, I guess that they are a delicacy in some parts of the world,
Mhm.
and there was a truckload of them
Yeah.
on the Oregon
Yes.
coast a couple of years ago. That
On Highway 26, I think.
I think it was 101.
Was it on 101?
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, anyway, it was. Yeah, it crashed, and these hagfish
Rich
were
now,
all over.
Can we do a continuous move? 032?
All over the road, all over people's cars.
A lot of slime.
Yeah, a lot of slime.
Continuous move 032.
A lot of slime.
Yes, track line.
Whoa.
Wow.
Wow.
Hello.
How pretty.
It's like a little UFO.
Yeah.
Little sunbonnet.
As I furiously click through my species ID guide.
I know, I'm trying to figure out what the red ones are. It's really nice to have the internet out here these days. So you can answer questions.
Go ahead.
It's so nice to see all the
0.3 is fine
starfish.
for now.
As we
Yeah,
just,
common names are always so hard for these because you're like, sure, you can make up a common name for that, and that's what we call it. Like,
yeah,
there's, one of my favorites. It is not the one that just went by, but it looks a lot like the paralias. The paralias are what we're seeing with the really thin tentacles on the red bodies. But
is that
there's
what
one,
they are?
and there's one called called the big red jellyfish, and it's not the one we're seeing. The big red ones have super thick, just a handful of really wide tentacles. But you're like, you can't just call it a big red jellyfish. Like, common names are a mess.
It's like the blobfish,
Oh,
you know, the one that
love them.
Yeah.
looks so cute. And I'm sure that's not its real name. It's the common name.
There is a blob sculpin that you
Blob
can see around here.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and they're
It is.
they're
That's
great
what I'm
parents.
talking.
Same fish.
Okay.
Just the pictures on the internet are
Yeah.
terribly distorted.
The last couple of times I've seen blob sculpin out here, they've been in pairs.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, so they can find a girlfriend. It's nice. Couples. They're not alone.
Yeah, when they lay eggs, they defend them, which is a pretty common fish behavior. So in pairs, they'll stay and they'll defend a clutch of eggs on a rock hard substrate.
Great.
Great life history characteristic to have developed. I don't-
cabezon do the same thing.
Mm,
You're scuba diving around here. Except for some reason, they'll follow you 10 meters from where their eggs are, which is not a very effective strategy.
They're trying to eat you. So a variety of views if you're watching on the website. Channel 1 is the main camera of the Hercules ROV on the seafloor. You can see a picture overhead of the Hercules ROV in channel 2. That's the main camera on ROV Argus, which is the kind of eyes in the sky helicopter perspective, stabilizing the tether from the ship by taking all of that heave. If the ship goes up on a wave, Argus goes up, but neutrally buoyant tether between Argus and Hercules isolates Hercules from being yanked around by the swell up above. And then if you check out channel 3, you're seeing a view over all of our shoulder from the back. So you see the back row monitors. It's where the Taylor and Susan and myself are sitting. And the front row, you have your video engineers and pilots and navigator, Ed, Robert, Kylie, Chris up there.
Video zoom.
Coming in.
Some sort of a flatfish, probably maybe a flounder or a
Sorry.
lingcod.
Not lingcod. It's probably a sole.
Do you know Tyler Ann?
I'm looking at my ID guide to see
Oh,
the
he's
exact.
scared.
Look at always trying to hide.
Cool.
Oh, okay, zoom out.
Aw,
Leave him alone.
That's smart.
Sorry, bud.
I'm not here.
It's like when you pull the covers up and the light comes on. And you're like, I'm out of here.
That's actually pretty cool.
Might have been a Dover.
Dover sole.
Might have been, yeah. Microstoma specifics.
Yeah, some viewers that are looking for their ID guides. Where we are up here off the coast of Oregon, in Washington, one of my favorite species ID guides is the Ocean Networks Canada Marine Life Field Guide. It's available as a PDF download from the Ocean Networks Canada website. It's really excellent for this kind of Northeast Pacific. The viewer wrote in there looking for Southern California. Other great resources there would be checking out the National Marine Sanctuaries. Individual national marine sanctuaries have species ID guides for their species inventory, which is basically every animal they know that lives in the protected area of the sanctuary. So maybe we check out the Channel Islands National Marine Sanctuary or the Greater Farallones National Marine Sanctuary. It'd be a couple good options.
And California has been wonderful as far as marine sanctuaries go. They have some very large marine sanctuaries. And how many of them? Like 7 or 8? I don't know. But Washington has a very large marine sanctuary, the Olympic Coast Marine National Sanctuary. But Oregon has been lagging behind. We have I say 7 or 8, but they're very small sanctuaries and mostly related with rocky outcrops, sea stacks, and things like that, and not very large. So.
Yeah,
But even those smaller sanctuaries have helped to, establish rookery fish for, when you can't fish somewhere around the edges of those sanctuaries, you'll find more fish. So,
yeah, the spillover effect is
yeah.
massive. I'm double checking before they say this, but I think Nautilus has worked in all of the national marine sanctuaries, certainly all of the national marine sanctuaries of the West Coast. We have not worked in the brand new Mid-Atlantic sanctuary. So, national marine sanctuary protection is an ongoing process. People can nominate parts of oceans that they love and are important to them and believe they're deserving of protection. You can check out lots about that on NOAA sanctuaries.
Yes, we're hoping to make a dive in the Olympic Coast Marine National Sanctuary on this cruise.
Yeah, so along the west coast we have Olympic Coast National Marine Sanctuary and water in Washington waters, and then in California of Greater Farallones National Marine Sanctuary, Cordell Bank National Marine Sanctuary, Monterey Bay National Marine Sanctuary, and the Channel Islands National Marine Sanctuary. Later this season, Nautilus will also be out in the Papahanaumokuakea Marine National Monument.
And Oregon does have 5 designated marine reserves: Cape Falcon, Cascadia Head, Otter Rock, Cape Perpetua, and Redfish Rocks marine reserves, each named for local natural landmarks. Within those marine reserves, all removal of marine life is prohibited, as is ocean development. So, oh wow, what's that? Is that a sculpin there? Oh, it looked pretty mad. But they're very small.
Kylie, you doing okay speed-wise? I might pick it up a little bit.
Yeah, that'd be fine.
Okay.
In both Channel
A
1
little
and
bit.
Channel 2, you're
A
seeing
little, yeah.
some great ctenophores come through the water. The
Great schnapp.
ctenophores are a relative of
Can
jellyfish.
you increase speed to 0.5 knots?
They're identified specifically by having comb rows. You think of those like tiny little hairs. They're called cilia. They beat together for transportation and feeding for those organisms. Bring things in, generate a current to gather that food. And you can see them when they come through the light. They're iridescent, so you'll get like rainbow colors off of those comb jelly rows, off of those hairs. They come through the light.
So they're jelly.
They're a different group of animals, but closely related.
Okay.
Yeah.
Similar. Seafloor as well. And rockfish obviously are associated with rocky habitats. More hagfish. Ew. I'm gonna.
Taylor, do you have an ID on the little orange stars that are so common?
These little stars, in my guide, they have question marks on what those are.
All right.
That's an interesting name.
Yeah. Let's see.
Christium, where?
Class Stereodia. But so
Okay.
that class, order, and family, genus, and species are not built in.
Interesting. Help us, Christopher Ma, if you're watching.
Let me check another guide, different one.
He's going to want a tighter shot.
Any
The
problems with
lighter colored
Norway?
ones with more arms are Rathbanaster. Maybe Rathbanaster californicus. Those will get quite big. Maybe foot and a half across. Yeah, if you have questions about the seafloor, send them in for our team. Happy to have you join the conversation, chat with us. we are at the base of a canyon that is part of the high degree of turbidity that we're seeing as sediment that flows out of the Columbia River is coming, both out along the surface and also down the canyon, following the topography of the seafloor. Also just a really productive area from the nutrients and runoff of the Columbia River and the natural upwelling here. I'd love to know what the resonance time for the Columbia River is, because just the week before I came out to the ship, I was driving across Washington and kind of crisscrossing the Columbia up there, and there's a number of reservoirs and dams, but I'd love to figure out how quickly some of the water I was driving by then might make its way out here.
Check, test, 1, 2, 3.
So the sea stars we're seeing may be Zoroasteridae.
Okay.
That's what I got so far.
How many new species have been discovered in the recent year? We've just started our 2021 expedition season, so this is always a challenging question to answer because of the amount of time that it takes. Using just the video data and looking at the seafloor is not sufficient data to describe a new species. So you need to collect a physical sample, and then that sample goes to a library of samples. We send ours to the Museum of Comparative Zoology, and you can kind of be checked out by researchers around the world for the taxonomic analysis, which is the kind of detailed examination something needs in order to move forward and be recognized as a new species. So that can be multiple years and is frequently multiple years for that process to really unfold. So we certainly can find things in our ID, in our IDs that we don't recognize, and begin that process and collect them. And it can be kind of like a suspected new species, but until that analysis happens, don't actually get to nominate it as a new species. But this great scale is thinking about hundreds of new species, potentially an expedition looking for it. A researcher published a paper based on our 2015 data quite recently. So, it took 6 years for that analysis of new species IDs to come out. But that was 30 new species from an expedition that lasted 10 days, something like that. So, you know, the potential is massive, massive, massive for new species.
Okay.
Taylor, what kind of animals might be living under the sediment surface that we aren't seeing?
You could be potentially seeing some sea cucumber mouth parts. I know they'll like stick out little mouth parts that they can use to feed in the water column. You could also be seeing things that we can't actually see. Like on our last expedition, we were looking at forams or foraminifera. What other little guys can be down there? Some, probably some little gastropods, little shelled organisms or clams. But I'm not seeing any clams here. I think I'm just seeing little small sea stars. Yeah, some sea cucumbers like to burrow. I haven't really seen any of those.
Worms, every worm.
Yeah, worms, polychaetes. Whenever we take cores, sometimes we'll, when we pull them out, we can see all of them, all the worms in there. Sometimes you can see like little bryozoans maybe growing on top of things.
Nice. So yeah, and then everything microscopic. So microbes.
Yeah, lots of microbes.
So many bacteria. All kinds of things that are super important actually in the chemical cycling, in the recycling and the long-term storage of carbon on the seafloor, and how it comes back up as sediment. How were samples of the deep seafloor collected before ROVs like this existed? Super good question.
Yeah, I know, like I think how they first found out that there was life down here was from towing, doing tows with ships and dragging something along the bottom, bringing it up, net. Seeing if something comes up. That might be trash right there.
Yeah, grab samplers, you can still do that with piston cores. It'd be a really advanced version of that, but you can drop, think about it like a big metal box where the bottom of it is open, and you're going to drop it with a bunch of weight, and it will collide, slam into the seafloor and close the bottom of the box and lift up whatever is inside there. There are drop cores that are designed for sediment, and there are drop cores that are designed for rock to pick up at the bottom. So, you know, a lot of pressure when it hits the seafloor there. You know, some of the original weights had wax on the bottom of a rock for a sounding like. So, you know, just dropping a rock off the side with some wax on the bottom and seeing if it brings up sand or pebbles, you know, would tell you if it was sand or pebbles. Those are some of the original soundings. Yeah, our ability to visually see the seafloor is really extremely limited. We have not seen the vast majority of this planet. We've only mapped about 20% of the global ocean, only visually explored about 5%, maybe.
Of
All right, Bob, favorite answer. What are the lasers for?
What are the lasers for, Bob?
What?
I was like, well, Kylie's driving. I'm gonna make you answer questions.
Oh, sorry.
What are the lasers for, Bob?
What are you, what?
What are the lasers for?
Oh, the lasers are to tell you the size of the things you're seeing there. So they're 10 centimeters apart. So they're parallel. So even at a distance, they're the same width.
Excellent answer. Why are they green?
Because green is the easiest to see in the water. So we used to have red lasers, and they're much, much harder to see.
that's true.
the light attenuation is greater for reds than it is for greens or blues.
And it looks cool.
And
So
it
here's the
looks
question, why are the lasers not blue if that has the least attenuation?
Well, blue-green, I guess, is the least attenuating, right? So
I think the
so
main reason
blue-
is they don't make, lasers don't really come in blue, or at least you don't get it high
well,
intensity lasers
they do,
easily.
but yeah, they're not, as bright as the greens. The greens are really bright.
High energy, yeah.
Yeah.
Is this like a laser pointer pen? What is the actual laser on the vehicle?
What is the laser that's
Yeah,
in there?
yeah. What's
Yeah,
it? I mean,
it's the
what's
same
thing look
laser
like?
as you'd find in a green laser pointer. They're not fancy.
Do you have to like put them in a special block or something?
They're purpose built. You buy them in these blocks that are 10 centimeters apart. The hard part down here is having a waterproof power connector cable going into that housing.
And one that can withstand pressure.
Yep.
Taylor, and question for you. Do we ever pull up a core sample that doesn't have any life in it?
Yeah, when we were actually at our dive sites for the last cruise, we were in very, well, like not visible, like that we could see at least. So we were at a very anoxic site. So when we would pull up those cores, I didn't ever really see any worms or polychaetes in there, but there were definitely 4Ms in there, but you need a microscope to see those.
Yeah.
And 4Ms are?
Oh my gosh, they're really small single cellular organisms that have these really cool like casings. I don't know if people know what diatoms are. They're not at all the same, but I kind of equate the two to each other. If it helps you think of something that small that you'll need to see under a microscope.
So they're a zooplankton. No,
Phytoplankton.
Phyto.
the phytoplankton.
Or no, they're not.
They're
phytoplankton,
yeah,
'cause they don't.
they're
The
protists.
Yeah, they're
diatoms are,
protists.
aren't they?
They're protists, but they're not.
Are diatoms phytoplankton?
Yes, they are.
Yes.
Okay, roger.
Yeah, because there's no light for them to use. But they do apparently steal chloroplasts.
Yeah, kleptoplasty.
So
There's a new photo album on Nautilus Live if you want to check up on a dive on our expedition specifically looking at these Santa Barbara Basin. So, yes, there is life there in those core tubes, but just not large, what we'd call myofauna. When you start to divide things by size, macrofauna are like big animals. I think about like the size of your hand. Myofauna are tiny things that live in the sediment. There are definitely better definitions of this than I'm giving you. And then, your microscopic life, bacteria, protists.
So when you say protists, that means that they are like a bacteria, but they don't have a nuclei, right? So they're single-celled.
Yes, they're single-celled.
Right, and foraminifera are also used to date, for dating
Yes,
the sediments, and they're a great
I
record.
believe that's what they use
So they have,
the
like,
staple
cells,
isotope
right?
analysis
Or,
for and stuff
Gates.
Mm-hmm.
like that.
So that's how we can actually date even landslide, like turbidites and landslides that we see at sea can be dated. A lot of things in the ocean are dated with foraminifera, which they call 4Ms. Not 3M, where you used to work, Dad, but 4Ms. Hi, Mom and Dad, in Wisconsin.
So I just saw in an article that some scientists believe they found some soil samples in Antarctica that are devoid of any life,
Even
but
for
it's
Crab.
like impossible to prove like
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Negative.
an age or
yeah,
Yeah, negative.
Taylor,
you
did you
can't
see that-
prove it with absolute certainty that there's nothing living in there. But
did you see that
every
crab
test
that
they've
just
done
went by?
has shown it's
nothing.
nothing there. Yeah,
Not
It's-
even 4Ms or...
yeah. So which is the opposite problem on Mars, right? They're trying to find
Mhm.
life, and like, have you done all the tests you need to do to find
Doesn't
if there's
matter
only
how
a
it looks,
few
how you think it
living
looks.
critters in the soil sample?
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Huh.
There's probably no place in the ocean that doesn't have any sort of life,
Mhm.
right? It's
Yeah,
kind of, it's friendly to life, even probably in brine lakes, right?
Mm-hmm. Specialist.
I like salt.
Maybe not that much salt.
Fair
I
enough.
know, probably not. Yes, brine lakes are very salty.
Yeah, so we are on our way across the Astoria Canyon sea floor. So we are transiting from one site where we were looking for methane bubbles to another. So we're not just wandering. We are headed in a direction on a purpose. But it is a great chance just to check out some of these. What we're seeing is the most common fauna here on the seafloor.
Probably another sole down there on the seafloor. Boy, they're pretty, aren't they? They have the stripes.
Good question. How long have ROVs been used for ocean exploration?
Remotely operated vehicles?
It's been pretty common since the mid 1980s.
Yeah.
That's when Jason came around
When was
to
the
the
first
one
ROV, Bob?
What was the first ROV?
Yeah.
I guess maybe the first oceanographic one might have been Huey's Jason 1, but I don't know that. I mean, there's
Right.
ROVs like Argus and stuff that,
Jason 1
like it,
or maybe
you know, like,
maybe the original Ropos.
yeah,
Oh, right.
Angus. Angus was like that was
Like
the
Argus.
great grandfather of Argus.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was in the early 90s or
Oh, that was
late
back in the
80s?
80s. Yeah,
80s?
maybe even late 70s, I think.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, you got to look at what are you defining as an ROV, though? You know,
Right.
like, you know, a ROV where you have manipulators and that sort of thing. So I think maybe Jason 1 might have been one of the
Yeah.
earliest.
Right.
That was you had to fly it manually, and it had a really clunky manipulator. And yeah.
I remember when I first started going out to see with these things in 97, it seemed like it was practically impossible to pick anything up.
Yeah.
It was
Yeah, we used
like,
to. Yeah.
I mean, now you make it look so easy, but back then it was a chore.
Yeah. But you know, Alvin was what